Hey, here we go.
By the
Yeah.
way, Daniel, how thick are those acoustic panels on your wall?
I think they're 2 inches.
Uh,
Yeah,
I've,
Oh,
I've,
wait, Dan, say something else again.
I think they're 2.
You could just see his own Ohio, Phil. Did you see it?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
oh my God.
Dante's always like this, man. Every
Yeah.
time. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason I did this is because basically for school I'm right now in my master's of psychology, and so we were having like kind of this like students get together with the professor and we talk about what's going on in our right now we're in the middle of our practicums, so we talk about what's going on. We kind of get advice from each other and from the professor about like what we can do to improve our counseling skills and that type of stuff. So I figured the same thing could apply here with vocal coaches because yeah, we have lots of different sessions for students of voice, but for actual coaches learning from other coaches, you can't really go to coaching lessons. I mean, I don't know of it. So I felt like this, for me, I would get the most benefit from talking with you guys and kind of getting an idea of what you guys do with your students to be able to get over certain hurdles and that type of stuff. So if anybody wants to kick it off with maybe some ideas of struggles that they've found with students and ways they found to overcome them and that type of stuff. Um,
Well,
Did you go
firstly,
live?
I haven't met you yet, so here's a handshake, and you too, Carl. I haven't had a handshake with you yet, so so I thought I'd just say
Did you go
hi.
live? Sorry, Adam. Did you go live?
yeah, we're live. We've been
Ah.
live. I was sitting there for a while waiting for you guys to come on live.
Hello, Phil.
How you
I've met
doing, mate?
everyone else. I've not met Daniel, but hello, Daniel. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad that.
So
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
that's okay. Basically, I was just gonna say one thing I've been tackling right now is because I've got like the gamut of students right now. I've got one student who's like a professional, he works professionally, and I've got a student who is tone deaf. And basically, with the tone deaf person, I've just been kind of working. I've been working because I find it so difficult to be able to just be like, okay, here are some scales, work through the scales, do the lip roll, because you can't even follow lip roll scale. So basically, what I've been having him do is just I hit random notes on the piano, and I get him to match that pitch. And if he's under it, or if he misses the pitch, I say, I ask him, were you on the pitch, off the pitch, or under the pitch, and he tells me what he thinks, and then he tries to readjust. So yeah, so that's the way I've been approaching it. Maybe if you guys have any suggestions of how to approach tone deafness and
I have a question for you.
yeah.
If you sing a note, can he sing back the same note without too much of an issue?
No.
Oh, so he can't even do that. Oh.
Okay, this is actually where I started too myself, and I've got a few guys that come from this. The thing that helped me the most, and what I find helps them, is because they don't even know when they're in pitch or not, is if they get a guitar tuner that has that shows the needle when they're in and out, and just have them. I got this idea of Jamie Vendera where you simply you play the tone, and you have them hum, and the needle will just show if he's in or out. And he can just do that 7 days a week, just 10 minutes going chromatically, holding each note. And after about a month, he'll actually be able to hear when he's in tune or not, and then he can actually move on to scales.
Right.
But otherwise, he'll need you to kind of be there to tell him whether he's in or out.
Yeah.
That's what I find works.
Yeah. And that's what I've been finding. It's just like half the lesson goes by with me being like, nope, that's not the pitch. Nope, that's not the pitch.
I found an easy way that I deal with that, because I actually have a couple students right now that are kind of dealing with that. An older guy and a younger girl. Is if I play, I'll say something down here, and I might just say on a lip trill, I'll say, can you do that? And if they go, and they miss it. I kind of go where they're at. So if I give them one tone and I say just lip bubble on that, and then they can't and they don't find it, but they're usually like above, like a little bit above it. So what I do is find their note. I'll find it, and I'll go, good, that's good. Start there. And then they can find from there. They have an easier time focusing once they have a tone and they can hear it, and I match their tone. Then where if I go up a half step or a whole step, they can usually hear it better than if I just start with them. Okay, ready? Then they have a harder time with that. So I usually match them, find where they're at, they can hear that, and then I start the scale from there and move it around. And that works for me. I've been doing that for a while.
You know what? I actually found a kind of weird phenomenon with these guys is usually they actually sing a harmony of the pitch that you're trying to do. Right. Usually when I play the pitch and when I find out what their note they're singing, it's usually like a fifth above it or something. It's like they're actually finding a different harmony of it. So it's kind of interesting. Their brains are just wired in that kind of direction.
Sometimes as well, I don't have that much experience with this. I had one student that struggled a bit, but sometimes it's just that they are so in that mindset of singing that they're not really calm. I find like if I can get them out of the whole idea of singing and just say, look, just make sounds like don't think about it in terms of being in tune, they start to calm down, and a lot of the time when they're able to copy you very easily because they're not thinking about singing. Like, at least that's my experience with it.
Like more like a sound effect kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Like as soon as people think they are singing, like they go into a whole different mindset all of a sudden. Whereas like really like if they just think of it in terms of making sound, they don't panic, they chill out, and then they can just make sound like you're making sound. Like I don't know, if you say a word, if I go hey and they say the word back to me, normally they'll match the pitch. But they won't be thinking, what's the pitch? What's the pitch? I've got to be in tune. They'll just copy the sound. Do you know what I mean? Right. It's kind of a different approach to the idea of being in tune. But I didn't like some things like I had no experience with when I started singing because I played musical instruments for a long time. Like I already kind of had that stuff. So some things I'm not really that sure how to fix because I didn't go through them myself, whereas other things I'm more able to fix.
And Philippe had something too. What were you going to say, buddy?
Yeah. What I usually do on those cases, the idea from Daniel is actually very cool. I'll probably try to use it too. But I usually simplify everything. Instead of working on scales, I'll do like a jump, like just that. I'll find a jump that the guy can do and help him doing, even if it takes 1 or 2 sessions to get it done, and starting to work from there. Parallel to that, I like to use a lot of work of listening. Pick a song and try to listen, but pay attention to what the instruments are doing, not just hear the song and mumble along, but listen once and pay attention to the cymbals, listen again, pay attention to the guitar, listen again, then pay attention to the vocals, and try to memorize how that sounds like. Usually that goes along well to build the musicianship on their head. It's a hell of a hard work, so I can tell you that. It will take time. It's not easy for the guy or the girl to do it. Yeah. But it's doable. It's doable. It's just like of experience that the person didn't have earlier in life, and they have to do it now.
But I'm gonna be honest. When I first started, if you showed me a song and said, can you listen for the drums in this song, I would not be able to pick out the drums. Like I didn't.
Really?
It all just sounded like one mush in terms of instruments.
I know what you're talking about because. From what I've noticed is I've noticed people just from the way they've been brought up or whatever, they listen for different things. Like the people who are generally naturally good with pitch tend to, when they grew up listening to music, they were paying attention to the actual melody. But then the guys that I hear that usually have pitch issues are usually guys that were ignoring the melody but were studying more of the textural components of the voice or the instruments or whatever. And so I meet guys that are really good at kind of matching the tone, like maybe the dark, gritty kind of tone of the singer, but not the actual pitches of it. And then I meet guys that are pitch perfect but can't even hear any of these tonal kind of stylistic qualities. So it's almost like that's just something I've noticed anyway.
Yeah, different people tend to prioritize different things. Like some people really focus on words in music. I never did when I was growing up much. So like I usually focused on melody. So like, yeah, if you focused on words, you know, like poetry and all that stuff, and just lyrics in general, then you probably paid less attention to melodies and things. So yeah, you would have like, you know, it depending on, you're right, depending on how you prioritize things, then you'll have developed slightly different skill set.
Yeah, I was a texture guy. I was always hearing textures, and I wasn't hearing anything else when I was listening to music when I grew up. My ear was just tuned to that. Yeah. So what's next? Anyone got anything else to add? Any other?
I wanted to add something to what Daniel said, because this isn't necessarily for people that have problems singing in tune, but it's a related issue, which is a lot of times when I get a female student, they have a hard time, they feel very uncomfortable in their low range. And it's really interesting because as long as they're high, they can match the pitch without a problem. But as soon as they get into their low range, a lot of times they're not even aware that they're not singing the right pitch. And just like what Daniel mentioned, you know, with them, a lot of times I have to kind of find their pitch that they want to sing first and say, okay, this is the range you're in now. Okay, you can sing these notes now. Can you just try it half step lower? Can you try it here? And sometimes they get closer to it, but it seems like it's a training process for them to really become accustomed to hearing those low notes in their range. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that.
That's exactly, especially with the younger girls. The younger girls usually have the problem with that because they're never using it. They're never going, you know, they're never going below middle C. They hardly ever go below that. So that seems to be hasn't been common, but when I see it, that's what's happening. That's why.
And the low notes feel different too.
What's that?
The low notes feel different too. So it's almost like they feel like they've got to create the note in a different kind of way, and so they end up missing the pitches on it.
Yeah.
Well, then you're dealing with trying to separate out pitch issues from often like some cultural issues where girls will shy away from masculine kinds of sounds and men will shy away from feminine kinds of sounds. Yeah. So men end up pulling chest and girls end up with no chest voice or avoiding it, you know, and just staying super heady as they go low. And then it's like becomes really complicated for the teacher to separate out, is this a pitch problem or is this like just because they are reluctant to go there? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Me and you look like twins, Carl. Look at us.
Yeah, we do actually look quite similar.
So, Adam, with the issue that you're having with your student, if you were to sing a melody for him right now and had him go to a keyboard, could he find the melody on the keyboard? Like just a little simple progression of like maybe 5 notes within 1 octave. Could he find those notes?
So I know he plays guitar, so he's good with instruments, and what's funny is he can tune the guitar by ear. But I haven't actually had him like try to match the pitch of my voice to an instrument.
I think that could be like related to what Felipe was saying, and probably would be a good part of training for him, especially listening training, is, you know, because it's something that he doesn't have to do specifically singing out loud. And, you know, Because I've had to do this with some people that have trouble matching pitch. Trust me, it is a painstaking process. What I had to do is I gave them a song, and it tended to be females more than males. It was The House of the Rising Sun by Joan Baez. And I went through it myself, and it's a one specific version of it. I identified every single note in there, including little note bends that she did and all that other stuff, in case people listen to that and they hear those note bends and they say, wait a minute, I'm hearing this note here, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got this other one. So I did that for the entire song, listened to it like several times, and then I make those people listen to that song. I say, you need to sit down with this, identify every single note you hear her singing. Most of the notes are only within one octave or so, but I say, you need to take the lyrics, and every single time you hear a different note with your keyboard, write it above the lyrics. Say, okay, this one she's singing the A, this one she's singing B, this one I hear a C, and so on and so forth. And it's a hard process for them at first because it forces them to listen in a way that they're not used to. But that's why I'm wondering, something like this will only work if the person can already like kind of find a tune. If they hear it sung or if they hear it played, even if they have to listen back to it like 5 or 10 times before they can identify the notes, if they can at least do that, it will help to shape more of their sense of tonality, of a tonal center for, like a key for a song, and that will help some with matching the pitch, because at least when they start trying to sing the notes, they'll sing it and they'll hear right away, wait a minute, I know I'm singing the wrong note because I know I'm not in key. I can't quite find what the right note is, but I at least know that I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. So he actually did correctly identify when he was wrong and whether he was below or above the pitch. So
Okay.
that was definitely a plus. What I was telling him, because he was asking me like, why do I have this issue? And especially with the fact that he can tune a guitar. So obviously his ear can identify pitch. But what I said was that, from my understanding, is that it's not about his ear so much, but the communication between his ear to his vocal cords. That he just cannot. Something gets lost in translation between what he hears as the pitch and then what his vocal cords can then recreate. And it always
When you get him,
go for
when you get him to do a scale, do you have him sing to the actual scale, or do you play it first and have him sing afterwards after it's finished?
Yeah, because we're on Skype, so I do
Oh,
Skype.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, because what I've noticed is there's two types of pitch development, and the first level is when they actually sing to the sound while it's playing, and that develops the pitch to a certain level. But then once you take them to a cappella, it doesn't carry over at all. They lose it completely, and they've then got to learn how to do it all a cappella. So the way I have these guys do this is first, if they start off completely tone deaf where they cannot tell any pitch, I start them with a chromatic tuner in their own time so that they don't waste too much time through lessons. So I have them, like I said, the needle will tell them when they're in and out. After about 7 days to 30 days, they can then hear when they're in and out of a note. Then they can start matching notes. Once they can match a scale in tune, I then have them move to hearing it and then reproducing it back while a cappella. So they go do, and then they go do, and then they check if they're in and out. And then once they're at that level, that's usually when the pitch starts taking off from there, and they can start using it in songs a lot better. So I find that difference between actually singing to something while it's playing. So when he's tuning a guitar, he might be able to hear it, and he might be able to hum, do 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 as he's tuning it. But then as he takes that away, he might not be able to replicate that. So it is a memory kind of thing, I find.
Mm-hmm. See, but he wouldn't even be able to hum along with the tuning.
I see.
His voice just can't do it.
Chromatic tuner, I'd recommend that highly.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him that as soon as we're off this. I'm gonna send him.
That's such a savior, I think that was for me and so many other people. Otherwise, they got to keep taking lessons forever to have someone that tells them when they're in and out.
Yeah. And think about that. It's an hour a week for like who knows how long. spending a lot of money. Yeah.
You're paying, well, depending on how much the coach is, you're paying like £50 an hour for a tuner, basically.
Well, yeah, I had one guy, right, and he wanted to do lessons, and he was completely tone deaf. Like he couldn't match any pitches, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to show you how to use this tuner, and then you're going to go away for the next 30 days and do it by yourself, and then come back to me, and you should be at a level where we can actually start training, like actual training. But he just didn't want to practice himself, and he was like, let's do a lesson. I'm like, no, do that. And he's like, oh, let's do a lesson. I'm like, I'm not doing a lesson with you until you do this. He didn't end up doing it. So unfortunately, if they don't have the willpower, they just, they don't do it. They don't put in that 30 days of effort,
If they want to spend the whatever money it is for you to be their personal tuner, why not?
Right.
Yeah, he just didn't show up though. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay, all right.
Like he wouldn't, he booked a lesson and didn't do it.
I see.
Oh, Adam, there is another thing I just thought of for this, and I find that a lot of times people that have trouble matching pitch, they can match it more easily in a high range because for whatever reason it's easier to hear the differences between the pitches when you're in a high range, and they just like stand out to your ear much more.
See, for him, he in addition to the tone deafness, he has never like before our first lesson, I don't think he has experienced head voice or falsetto since he was a child. So like he is deathly afraid of high notes. So I'm like, just let it go. There's nothing harder about versus there's just nothing harder about that. Actually, it's easier. It could just be as light and easy as I want, whereas the has a little bit more weight to it, So so yeah, I just say let it fall apart, let it crack, let it do whatever one needs to do, just get up there. And I try to, every time he gets there, and I've had him get there, I'm like, okay, memorize that sound and that sensation. I want you to go back to that every time we're in that range. But yeah, so it's going to be a work in progress, but I can tell it's going to be a long time. So I don't know if you guys want to do this, but Daniel and I were having a discussion on the forums that kind of was talking about, he posted that video. Dan, do you remember specifically what you wanted me to bring up in regards to that?
No, I just remember saying, hey, don't bring that up on the thing on Wednesday, but I don't remember.
About high notes. It was something about high notes. Dan said it doesn't have, less is more, and then something, and then you said blah blah blah. Let's do it, and then Dan said blah blah blah, and then blah blah blah.
Yeah, blah. It was I remember you were saying something about getting through a 90-minute show consistently.
Yeah,
and then and I was saying that's just it. If you can, once you realize that the high notes aren't harder, and you don't keep grabbing at them. And me and Philippe have had these conversations before, where sometimes like you'll be learning a song. Philippe, remember when we were doing like a Locked Out of Heaven, and it's like the higher parts were totally the easier parts. It's as it comes down in the scale, that's where it kind of gets tricky. At A4 to establish that A4 9 times, just bam, 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 bam. You keep hitting the A4. It's like lifting 5 pounds 100 times. It gets tiring. But when you get that relief, when you get to hit the high C, or whatever it is in the song, it's a C sharp or a C, and it just makes you go, oh, well, that feels good for a second. And then you got to come back to the A's and the B flats and just hammer and hammer and hammer and hammer. And that's the thing. It's getting the control, getting those A4s to feel, working that position top down, so you get the A4s to feel more like that C, and so you feel like you're not going always reaching up. It feels like a chick, and you're up like a what's that for a car? A jackhammer. You go up and you're like, and you get that relief. It's but I get the relief of the sitting up there, down a little bit lower, and then it feels a little bit easier. It may not sound as big as you want to sound at that moment in your training, but if you do that over and over and over and over and over, finally you start to feel like, oh, I can sound, especially if you're gigging, then you can kind of push the envelope a little, like, and feel that position, and then go, oh, now I can lean into that position more. Now I can lean into that position more, but it's hard to get there. If number one, if you're not singing, I think if you're not singing a lot because you don't get that feeling enough of that really sitting down on it. You know what I mean? It's like practicing at home is cool and all that's great, but you really start to feel what it the more experience you get. You know, you'll feel that more and more, and you'll have your trial and errors more. But I think that's what helps. Like blowing my voice out back in the day was awesome. I loved. Now I look back and go, thank God I blew it out that many times to kind of figure out where I needed to go. You know what I mean? If I hadn't, and when you're young, your voice gets quicker, so you can blow it out and you're ready to go the next day or 2 days later. As you get older, if I was to blow my voice out like I did then, I would never be able to work. You know what I mean? It wouldn't. But luckily, through those trial and errors, I learned to go. I don't have to kill myself. I can put it in that position that feels easier, but I can lean into it because now I have the skill to lean into it, not because I have the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think we were talking about.
So I don't know, maybe I'm just not there in my training yet, but I don't know, a high C does not seem easier to, I mean, in full voice does not seem easier to me than an A. Maybe I just haven't gotten there to that.
Man, like that, I can tell you the way I try, like if I've got a song that's got an A in it, I usually start on the high C and bring it down because otherwise I tend to push up to the A in the wrong kind of way. And I find the high C is where I start kind of releasing, and then I try and carry that feeling down to the A, and then I find the A starts thinning out nicely and getting in that right kind of sound. But I guess it depends, man. So I think it depends on your tendency, because my tendency has always been to yell up to notes. So for me, I've got to kind of take it the same way Dan does. But there are people who aren't used to engaging their voice and telling them to lighten up. They end up just going to falsetto. So it's you know.
Yeah, the problem on the A4 is not so much the difficulty of the note, but the quality that you have to produce.
That you want.
Yeah. On the C5, even if you don't do a super perfect note, all defined, all rounded and forward, it gets by, no problem. On the A4, it appears, it becomes evident. So it's much more trickier. You get yourself in a position that you really have to go for it, and that's a problem. Have to go strong. It's very intense. It's what Dan said. It's like muscling up dozens of time on the roll. Sometimes I did this a lot. I just take a song up a semitone 2 and go for it. Some songs don't work like that, so it's not a perfect solution either.
Well, I think that it's in the context of what you were saying with Locked Out of Heaven. The song is living on the A4, right? Versus the high C is like every now and then popping up to it. So yeah, it's difficult to live on that type of like really high note. Like, because I'm thinking about "Stay With Me." That's the A, I believe. Stay. When he sings that, that is not a difficult note for me because
is this
Sam?
Is this Sam?
Once.
And it's probably the top of the song, right? That's the highest note of the song. Is that the highest note of the song?
No, then he goes into
C sharp.
Adam.
But sorry.
We lost Adam.
Is Adam talking about Sam? What's his name from England?
Sam Smith.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Personally, I find his songs about 100% easier to sing than Bruno Mars's songs. Like me personally, I don't really know why that is. To me, I think he's more of an. Can you hear me?
No, I'm saying I think that's because of the sound. Sam's sound is a much smoother, flowing sound, whereas Bruno's kind of almost like from the church where he's hitting it. You can hear the rasp, you can hear the throat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you want to do that aggression, you want to put that in it, and that's him.
Those staccato singers are harder, like Michael Jackson, where it's very staccato. It's easy to lose the spot and get in the habit of just starting to push. I think when they're more legato, you can kind of sit in the phrases a lot easier, sit in the pocket a lot easier.
Bruno
Yeah,
tends to Bruno tends to just live like in between the first and second bridge a lot more. I think that Sam guy, he kind of goes up there, but it will be at smaller sections within the songs.
It's more delicate, not as
Yeah,
Bruno's one of those guys that can really take his belting in a chest of your belt higher. You know what I mean? And it still has the head overtones, but you can hear that push in his voice, which makes it. That's why you like it. It's like the old gospel singers. You like it because they're going for it. Whereas Sam Smith is like kind of more of that. It's nicer. It's nicer. It's easier to listen to. You could sing it in your house, in your room, and be like, this is nice. But when you're trying to do something else, you're trying to go for it. With a live band, with Bruno Mars and a live band, it's easier than trying to do Bruno Mars on acoustic. That's much harder, I would think, because it's not as intimate.
I'm kind of interested to see how Bruno Mars's voice holds up, like in 10, 15 years' time. See, like, if he's still got it together or what. He's still pretty young, eh?
Yeah, they're young guys. Okay. Now, how did Adam disappear, but he's the one holding the call?
I have no clue.
It's a conspiracy, man.
That's what I'm thinking.
There was no Adam ever to begin with.
I think he'll come back, maybe. Yeah, you can do that. Felipe had something to say, I think. I've kind of butted in, sorry.
I'm trying to remember. I have no idea now. Absolutely. I think it was
What I
something
was
about
going
the
to
quality.
say is sometimes it's just lighter singers that lose their voices on the tour because what I find is if you don't if these people who sing really light are not used to knowing how to sing big correctly, then when they want to sing big, they tend to do it in the wrong kind of way. And so I see a lot of these kind of folk kind of singers where they sing with this light, airy kind of sound, and then when they go for these big tones, they don't know how to do it, and that's when they start just going up there on the tour to survive through the set. And since they got to do it night after night, they end up killing themselves. So it's almost just as much as the heavy kind of rock guys as well as these light kind of guys can sometimes encounter the same problems. Just
sometimes
the opposite side of the spectrum.
Yeah, sometimes though that can be a problem that their head voice isn't really, like when you say light and airy, like a pure head voice wouldn't really be airy, like so it really depends on the head voice coordination, if the chords are like connecting on the edges or if they're coming apart slightly. If you've got that hiss in the tone, usually their mix will be pulled. If the head voice is like super coordinated and connected really nicely, it will be light, but there'll be no hiss in the sound. Like that's much easier to build mix on, I find. You are right though. I guess it's a question of the quality of the foundation of the head voice. Like, is the quality of that coordination like spot on or not? That's a lot what Brett teaches, who I kind of look up to as a coach. But he talks about that pure head voice, that connected head voice that sounds like falsetto, but it's not that uncoordinated, like push kind of sound. Yeah, but once I found that kind of head voice, even if it's light, it's not really like disconnected and airy. It's more that kind of feels